Plenty to get to today, Mario. LSU has hired a football coach. That would be Brian Kelly. Of course, by now you all know that. Leaving Notre Dame to take over as LSU's 34th head football coach in the program's history. It's going to be a lot of reaction to that today. I know there already has been on this radio station, but will be on our show and the shows that follow us as well, from how it came to be to is it the right fit? That's something everybody's been talking about a lot. Is it the splash hire? Can Brian Kelly win here? Just a lot of different things to get into. Who does he bring with him potentially? Rafael Esparza will join us in his regular spot at 2:30. We'll get his thoughts on Brian Kelly to LSU as well. So we've talked a little bit of coaching search with Rafael throughout the season, and we will also get his take on conference championship weekend coming up though as well in college football and a little bit in the NFL. Get some plays to look forward to this week as well. But it's going to be a lot of Brian Kelly today.
Yeah, it's going to basically be the Brian Kelly show with Rafael and picks in between. Tomorrow we'll get back to previewing Saints game against the Cowboys. We'll talk fantasy football, but we have to react to this, Musso. It's no longer a coaching search. It's a coaching hire for the LSU Tigers. And as I give my initial thoughts, I'll be honest with you, I was taking a nap yesterday, or starting to take a nap, when the news broke that LSU was targeting Brian Kelly, that was a real possibility. I woke up and I saw the news that Brian Kelly was going to be LSU's next head football coach. And honestly, at first, my reaction was not good. I didn't have a very positive image of Brian Kelly in my head. In my head, he was somebody who kind of capped out as a head coach and reached the ceiling at Notre Dame. He's somebody who doesn't have the best personality off the field, and initially I didn't like it. But then I started reading up on Brian Kelly. I started kind of contextualizing what he and his style might look like at LSU, and ultimately I think it's a good hire. And no hire is going to be perfect, Musso. Any candidate is going to give some people pause for some reason, but and I know that coaching in the SEC and coaching at LSU is a much different challenge than what he's been doing at Notre Dame. But at the end of the day, I think Brian Kelly brings structure. He brings process. LSU with this hire is trying to avoid the volatility that they've seen the last few years. You don't want to have the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. You want to have a program with structure, and this is a program that has obviously potential to do that and to be able to sustain that, which LSU was not able to do with Ed Orgeron. So I could see why some people have pause. We're going to have to talk about his record in the playoffs and his record against high-level competition, but at the end of the day, like I said, if you take what he's done at Notre Dame and picture him doing it now at LSU with better resources and just a more conducive environment for him to succeed, in my opinion, I am supportive of the hire.
So we can talk all about why Brian Kelly left Notre Dame to come to LSU, and we'll get to that. But I want to touch on something kind of you said there. Since 2012, LSU has really struggled with consistency and sustainability. I mean, look, they ended up playing for another national championship in 2011, and we know how that finished. And after that, they really struggled to get back there after they were on the doorstep in 2012, not for the stupid screen pass to Yeldon. But anyway, water under the bridge. You climbed back up to the mountain in 2019, but you couldn't sustain it. That's the biggest box I think Brian Kelly potentially checks for LSU is consistency and sustainability. Look no further than his time at Cincinnati. He had 3 10-win seasons there out of his 4. Look no further than his time at Notre Dame, but specifically the last 5 years where it's been 10 wins or more each of the last 5 years with 2 playoff appearances in the last 3 years. Not to mention, Notre Dame could very well backdoor their way into the playoff this year, so it really could have ended up being 3 playoff appearances in 4 years there. And in between the last 5 bowl games that Notre Dame has gone to, 3 of them have been New Year's 6, and they'll have another one this year. So in the last 6, it'll be 4. That's the sustainability. That's the consistency that I do believe LSU is looking for. Get someone in here that's going to win 9, 10 games. And I know Notre Dame and to the SEC, I know that. To be fair, their schedule's a lot harder than people give it credit for, especially in the playoff era, because they're stacking it with Power 5s because they know that they have to. So the record he's had in those last 5 years does hold a little bit more water. Can he go 10-2 every year in the SEC? No. But can he get me some 9-3s in there and get into a New Year's 6? Yeah. And then when it all comes together one year, make your run at the national championship in the playoff, he's got a heck of a chance to do that. And I think that's what LSU ultimately was looking for in this hire as one of the biggest boxes to check. And I think Brian Kelly has a great chance to check that box.
Still very surprised. Like I said, this was, at least for me, maybe you kind of saw this coming a little bit more. This was a lot for me to process in a little bit of time. And we talked about yesterday the odds from betonline.ag to be LSU's next head football coach. And Brian Kelly was very much not on that list. Lane Kiffin was the leader, 2-1, followed by Mark Stoops, followed by Mark Campbell, followed by Luke Fickell, Dave Aranda, and Bill O'Brien. I'll tell you off top, I'm way more excited about Brian Kelly than I would have been about maybe any of those guys, sans maybe Lane Kiffin. And like you said, said, man, the consistency of how he's won. Say what you want about the results, and we're going to talk about that in the next segment, but the sample size there at Notre Dame, for him to do it as long as he's done it, is really impressive. And consider that when he took over at Notre Dame, they were coming off of a 4-8 season. They weren't the program that he's exactly leaving right now. He made them a lot better. Like I said, he just kind of capped out, I think, with his ceiling. And I think that he agrees with me based on him coming here. Because like you said, they're in the midst of an 11-1 season right now, and an impressive one at that. Yes, they did take the loss to Cincinnati, which might keep them out of the playoffs. But this year, they had to replace a lot. 4 starting offensive linemen, their best linebacker, Ian Book, obviously, who's the winningest quarterback in the history of Notre Dame, and his defensive coordinator. He's brought in Freeman, who's done a good job, and his name is in the news cycle as well. But just the consistency of what he's done and just the move to leave Musso. I mean, in the last 30 years, 12 coaches have won 11-plus games in their final season at a Power 5 school. Of those 12, 5 of the coaches left for the NFL, 5 of them retired or resigned due to some kind of scandal that they were going through, and only 2 of them took a job at a different college football program. The 2 instances are both Brian Kelly, him leaving Cincinnati for Notre Dame, and now him leaving Notre Dame for LSU. So you can't really question his motivation. In his mind, he's taking the next step on the coach's totem pole, and he's coming to LSU to hopefully win a championship.
That's what it's all about, right? Like I said, we could talk about why he came. That's what it's all about. He's, based off career wins, the winningest active coach in college football with 284 wins in 31 seasons as a head coach. Career wins. He is a 2-time National Coach of the Year, a 3-time Home Depot Coach of the Year, the only coach to win that award more than once. Number of All-Americans, 53 draft picks since 2012 at Notre Dame. The resume it's conference championships at Cincinnati. The one thing that's missing is the national championship, and I agree with you. I think he probably feels like he hit a ceiling at Notre Dame, whether that be because of facilities, whether that be because of other restrictions they have, whether it be academics or some of the housing requirements and residential requirements they have on campus, whatever it may be, whether it be, it's just really, really hard to recruit to South Bend, Indiana because of those restrictions, but also because that place is miserably cold. And outside of a few exceptions, be Ohio State, Michigan, Oregon, you know the list, the best players in the country are trending and ending up more in the South. And Brian Kelly knows that. And he's recruited nationally, and he's got ties in Louisiana with some of the guys he's brought up to Notre Dame from this state. If he can recruit to that school, he can recruit to LSU, and we already know he's a good coach. So I do like the hire. I think he's got a great chance to compete and a great chance to win big at LSU. Now, it has to all come together, of course, but I do think he has a great chance, and I think that's why he left. He recognizes that chance, and he recognizes that it probably had run its course at Notre Dame.
Exactly. He's top 3 winningest coach of all time right now. If you count the wins that got vacated at Notre Dame, he's the winningest active coach ahead of Saban, ahead of everybody. So why does anybody have any kind of pause here? We briefly mentioned it, his record in the playoffs and his record against better competition. Since he got to Notre Dame, 1-8 against top 10 opponents. For his career, he's 3-10. Yes, he has 3 playoff appearances and the BCS championship appearance in 2013, but we all know what happened. They took the loss 42-14 to Alabama, then 30-3 to Clemson in 2018, and then 31-14 against Alabama in 2020 most recently. But like you said, he's still recruited really well at Notre Dame. So the question when it comes to Brian Kelly and can he take that next step at LSU is the talent disparity between Notre Dame and LSU that big that the fans should excuse those results that we've seen in the college football playoffs and against SEC teams. Like you said, he's recruited really well. If you look at the rankings the last 5 years in between Notre Dame and LSU, 2021, LSU was 3, Notre Dame was 9. 2020, Notre Dame 18, LSU 4. This is when you start seeing the disparity a little bit. Notre Dame in 2019 had the 15th best recruiting class. LSU had the 5th best. 2018, Notre Dame had the 10th best. LSU had the 15th best. And then in 2017, Coach O's first year at LSU, Notre Dame had the 10th best recruiting class, and LSU had the 7th best, according to 24/7 Sports. So he doesn't have access to the same talent maybe when it comes to recruiting, but when similar talent has been his opposition, he's gotten killed. But like I said, at the end of the job, it looks like he wants the job and he wants that opportunity to prove that he can take that next step at LSU.
So I don't think you excuse those results at all. I mean, you can't. That's why there's going to be an element of prove it for Brian Kelly at LSU. But looking at it on the surface without him having coached a game here yet or coached a full season in the SEC, you look at it as not excusing him, but saying, okay, now he's in the position that he's wanted to be in his entire career. Can he take that next step? Prove it. And you'll have that element. And look, we'll get our answer because it's a 10-year, $95 million deal. As long as he's winning, he'll be here a long time and have at least 10 chances to prove that he can get over the hump.
Yeah, and he knows what good football players look like, and his coaching style, LSU fans should be excited because he specializes with offensive line. You know, running game and passing game, pass protection too. That's kind of been his specialty, and he's coached some really good football players. If you look at some notable Kelly alums throughout his time at Notre Dame, going back to 2010, guys like Golden Tate, Kyle Rudolph, Harrison Smith that he's put in the NFL, Monty Teo, who played with the Saints a little bit. And then you look at the fact that he put 3 all-pro offensive linemen into the NFL in Zach Martin, Quentin Nelson, and Ronnie Stanley. Clearly, this will be welcome at LSU.